Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Today, with our guest, Martin Marquet, who is a producer, a former publicist for major projects, and many other things he's going to talk about. We're on location at the Hollywood Museum, and we're right here on Highland in the old Max Factor building, which is a great Art Deco building. And then we're going to move on for our next guest to Duke and Duke in West Hollywood. It's a wonderful art gallery, and we will have Brian Lohmann as a guest there. So here we are. Martin Marquet was born in Los Angeles and moved to Paris with his family at the age of 8. He attended a bilingual school, and at 18 he finished the Atelier de Sèvres, and there you were in Paris. And then what were you going to do? It was kind of like a 2-year junior college, wasn't it, the Atelier?
Pretty much. It was my generation living in Paris and not necessarily being born with a silver spoon in the mouth. We were in an amazing cultural environment.
Well, how did they get into that Atelier?
We had to sign up. I can't remember what the admission...
Did they ask you? I mean, did they think
Yeah,
you were artistic, or you had to have a
little
certain
bit. No,
bent?
you have an interview, and you have to give a little bit of sense of what you wanted to do in life. And I was interested in learning about art history, and I was very, very interested in industrial design. So
you had the 2 things that they taught.
Exactly.
And when you got out of school,
well,
you became a chef. Everyone in France becomes a chef.
Exactly, that's in the blood.
No,
I was going to attend a industrial design school, and I had about 5 months of free time in Paris. And I called up my father and I asked him, what could I do? I don't want to be hanging around doing nothing until my next school program. And he invited me to call a friend of ours who our family shares rights on the Jacques Tati films, which my grandfather worked with for 40 years.
He worked on the films, or he worked with Jacques Tati?
Both. He was his screenwriter for all these years, and one of his best friends, and they met at music hall in the 40s, I believe.
Your grandfather?
My grandfather.
Okay. So what did your father tell you to do?
Well, at that time they were restoring Playtime, which is his last film of the Jacques Tati catalog, and I was basically part of the team of our families working on the restoration of the film, the remastering of the films, and the re-release of the films.
So it was all like electronic media?
It was, well, we blew up...
Was it like Photoshop and stuff like that?
No, it was blowing up the film in 70 mil. It was re-releasing the films in theaters internationally.
Oh, it was at that time.
It was, and we actually had a great screening in Cannes in 2001, I think.
Oh, you did? Okay, let's go back to Jacques Tati. I know Jacques Tati was a comedian, actor,
filmmaker.
Filmmaker. Tell us about him and why he was so famous and how this archive came about.
He had this vision, I think, which was very unique from especially from a French background, of lifestyle in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, it was that late in the 60s and 70s?
50s, 60s, 70s.
Oh, I see.
And he really had this look on architecture, art, and the bourgeois lifestyle at that time with a lot of humor.
With humor, yeah.
And it was, his films are hilarious. And same thing, I think the French generation knows Jacques Tati extremely well, but his films were as well very popular in Japan and the US, and I came on board to help with promoting his films 30 years later.
Were they all in French?
Yes.
And so you understood French?
Very little script.
Oh, but they, They weren't silent films.
No.
So what did he talk? Did he dance?
He
did he
danced.
make movements?
It was the body language in environments. It was situations of a human being within a context of vacationing on in France, or the context of an airport.
And for how long were the movies? Regular length?
They were
90
like 90
minutes?
pretty much, yeah.
And did he have a whole cast with him?
He had a cast. He had a cast, but the cast was, it was almost working with the non-actors. There were people, and he met a lot of people in his life that were that became great friends, and who worked with him in many different capacities.
So was your grandfather in one of the films?
He was an actor. He's the butcher in Jour de Fête.
Oh,
He was an assistant director on another film. He worked with Jacques Tati for 40 years.
So when you say the families came together to do it, it was a very close-knit group.
It was, but I mean the families, meaning the people who today own the rights to the films. There are only a few families, including mine, and that's really what got me started with promotions and publicity. Film publicity started with me, with my heritage and knowledge of the Jacques Tati films, promoting his films
And you worked for some top PR firms in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean, were you with DDA?
DDA, and I think it's what launched my career in a way in film publicity, which is not what I was thinking about doing ever.
But you
I was
were
going
doing
to do industrial design.
Film festivals and different things like that, right?
Yeah.
But those are really specific.
They are. And I think it was, for 10 years, I feel like it was an extension of my art history classes.
Oh, that's good.
And that's why I've always accepted my role as a publicist, although it was never something I wanted to do. I was exposed to visual arts all the time, and I got to work within the last 12 years with great artists.
Well, then, yes, you worked with the actors, and you worked with the filmmakers and music people, and so it was right up your alley.
Yeah.
Tell us what M-Link is.
M-Link is...
Martin Link?
Maybe. It's the M. It's the M of the. It's the M of my name. It's the M of Martin. Is the M of. It could be AIME, which means love in French. I don't know. It could be. It could be a lot of things. Link was. I needed to come up with a corporate name for my company, but Link was the best way to symbolize what I wanted to do with my publicity activities, was really to put people together, to put an audience together with a film, to put a filmmaker in touch with a producer I've worked with on another film, and to create these bridges between one world and another.
Well, I call that very entrepreneurial, because, and I look at you as an entrepreneur because you do take all of these different things that you know and put them together. Did M-Link, part of what you were doing, help with the advertising in festivals? Did you take things that, and what did you learn that was so specific that got films into festivals? How do you do that? I mean, are there certain guidelines?
No, I mean, I think the film industry is extremely competitive, but I set up my own company because I wanted to work with the filmmakers I really believed in and I felt compelled by. And in a way, I think the first thing to do when you work as a publicist or as an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, is to trust the material itself.
Because it speaks for itself.
I think the Oscars, it's so competitive that there's a lot of lobbying done, in a way.
Yeah.
Festivals as well, but if you work with the people that you really believe in and support and trust, it's a matter of coming up with the vocabulary to talk on behalf of a filmmaker, to talk on behalf of a film, and find a way to respect the nature of an artistic or of a work of art and promote it to an audience during the festival.
You have to really be able to write, to capture that.
Yeah,
so did you ever take any writing classes?
No, never. And I was not I was not a big reader. I was just kind of floating from 18 until now. I've spent a lot of time in museums, watching films, and being in environments, and just living a life where I felt the emotion coming through me.
And then you just put it...
And then when I wanted to understand more about specific things, I would go into specific books. And I started reading late in my life,
I know,
which is
isn't it
interesting.
great though? But the great thing is you learn so much when you're older. You absorb more, I
You
think.
do, but then when you start reading, you can't stop.
Oh, but no, because you really want to know something.
Yeah.
You just came back from Cannes.
Yeah.
And what were you doing there?
I was working on one extremely wonderful documentary called Room 237, which is a film by Rodney Asher, who's an LA-based filmmaker who created a film that has a lot of humor as well, and it's 9 different interpretations of what went through the mind of Kubrick when he created The Shining.
Oh, how
and
great!
And what are these motivations? What are these metaphors that we can identify in the film? And the film did extremely well.
Did he interview different people to
He
say?
He did, but not necessarily film people. People who
people
were
who-
expert in history of the Holocaust,
Really?
experts in history of the killing of the Native Americans. And he went to understand what were the possible motivations of this filmmaker in a very complex film that was not so popular when it came out, yet we keep talking about it 30 years later.
And what's the name of it?
Room 237.
And then what about Ballad of Genesis?
That's a very important element to my story. I met the director of the film 6 years ago. Her name is Marie Lozier, and she's a New York-based experimental artist. And we met through friends, and she was telling me about this film she was directing on Genesis Brer Peorage and her love affair with Lady J. And I thought the film was exactly the kind of film I wanted to be involved in terms of production, because there was no terminology.
Had she already made it?
She was filming it.
She was.
But as all experimental artists, they're not produced.
That's
And
right.
it would go against their own nature to have a producer kind of tell them how to work, which is not what I do. I just help them raise more money to have more time to work on their art. But I think the audiences are used to being told that this is a genre, this is another genre.
Right.
And they are kind of afraid to step into a new world that they are not familiar with. But what we're seeing today, and I've worked on an amazing film recently called Spring Breakers, and it's Harmony Korine, who's the writer for Kids of Larry Clark and the director of 4 incredible, now 5 feature films, including Gummo and Trash Humpers, which was his film 2 years ago. And he directed a film about 4 girls gone wild on spring break. And being bailed out of jail from a rapper, drug dealer, James Franco. And the girls in the film are incredible. They are Disney actresses, Selena Gomez, Vanessa Hudgens, and in real life, making this career move was almost like their own spring break, going from Disney directors to Harmony Korine. And the freedom they found in working with him was incredible. And this is telling a lot about our society today. These actresses are hungry for a certain freedom that we're not finding in the studio system anymore.
Well, that's why we love independent films,
That's why we love independent films, and that's why we have to stop creating stigmas around even Hollywood actors. They're not just Hollywood actors.
That's true.
And they have a great sense of art.
But that person who will go into a film like that to break the circle is the kind of person who really loves the craft.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have it. It's interesting to have the story coming from these young actresses who are 18, 20, 22 years old, and finding a great way to identify their roles fictionally in the film, but in their own lives to create parallels between a career move and to go work with an independent filmmaker and relate to their own characters in the film as girls just calling for freedom.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank
you so much.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with Brian Lohmann. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're on location at Duke and Duke Gallery, and my guest is actor, teacher, and associate artistic director of the Impro Theater, Brian Lohmann. Brian was born in Denver and raised in San Francisco, where he studied at San Francisco State, He went on to get his Bachelor of Arts and Humanities at the New College of California, San Francisco. He's been on the stage, in film, and on TV. Brian has been a consultant. He's taught classes around the world, and you taught at ACT. Everything came back to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Everything that I was like talking and looking for about you was you were at ACT for 7 years.
Yes, I was.
Right out of school? How was that?
It was terrific. I was lucky enough to be a company member, so I got to do a couple of shows there and do some acting on the main stage. Unfortunately, that happened after the earthquake in '89 had struck. So the Geary was in disrepair. I wasn't able to act on the Geary stage.
That was a great stage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A big place.
Oh, yeah.
And so was it right out of school that you taught there?
Not directly right out of school. I started teaching there in '88 and taught through '95.
Oh.
And in the interim, I had a couple of improv groups in the city that I'd worked with. I started improvising right out of high school.
So
I
you founded some groups
Yes.
in North Beach where you performed. What groups did you find?
I am a co-founder of Bay Area Theater Sports, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary next weekend. Dan O'Connor, who's the artistic director of Improv Theater, is a co-founder as well. So we're driving up to perform at the Bayfront as part of the 25th anniversary.
Oh, you did. Well, is it an improv?
Yes.
It
it's
is improv.
A thriving improv school and a performing group.
Since you were 17, you said you were acting in San Francisco, and a lot in North Beach, which is the cradle of everything, I guess, right?
Yeah. No, you just
You
walk
can't
down the street and creativity drops from the rafters.
I know, bookstores and theaters and everything there. So what were you doing at that age?
I was working with my high school teacher, two of her colleagues. I had improv as an English elective in high school. And Mary Idiocetes, who was with a group called the Pitchell Players in San Francisco, which was an offshoot of the committee.
The committee, yeah.
Yeah, Ann Bowen, who was Roger Bowen's wife, was their director. So very deep into the DNA of improv on the West Coast. And Mary was my high school teacher. She picked myself and Diane Amos, who you may know is the Pine Sol lady, as two of the younger members of this group called San Francisco Times, along with Lori Cox and Chris Prey.
It's interesting because in improv, you don't have to memorize anything.
This was a hybrid, so we had sketches and improv. It was more in the Second City mold, where you improvise in the second half, and the first half has a little bit of improv, but there's sketches and songs.
Well, what is hybrid? That's what I was going to ask you. What is improv / hybrid mean? Because you produced that kind of a play.
That means there's some scripted elements to it. And I loved having that combination of acting and improvising, and founded a group called Pulp Playhouse in San Francisco that was 4 actors and 4 improvisers, and we would tell an evening of stories with scripted narration. So each of us would play a narrator character in a different style, like the Pulp magazine, so crime, horror, science fiction, espionage. Each of us would be a character. We'd get a title for the story we were going to tell.
But that's the improv side.
And that's the improv part. We'd make up the story. So
and then the other side that was scripted was just telling you.
You come out as a character, do a rehearsed scripted character monologue as that character.
And then go into
and
that?
Get the title.
And then go into that?
Or I played an Edgar Allan Poe type character who was in his attic beginning to lose his mind because his mother was driving him crazy. He lived with his mother.
So what part did you come out that was scripted?
That monologue. So I'd be in the attic talking to my mother off stage and trying to get inspiration for the story. I'd take some laudanum, like you do, and then the story would come to me, but it would be in a title that I would hear from the audience. And once they would say that title...
They would actually say it?
Yeah. I hear a story. I know there's a title out there. And then the audience would shout something out. And I'd go, yes, The Broken Key, and begin to improvise the narration. And the actors would come out and start to improvise the story.
I think you've told us what improvisation is, but kind of go through it a little bit more.
It's theater without a script. It's making it up off the top of your head and telling a story with the other people that are on stage with you. It's not a solo art form. You'll notice maybe Robin Williams is the only improviser.
San Francisco.
Did
he work with any of those groups that you were talking about?
Robin never sat in with Pulp Playhouse, but we did get to jam together at a couple of the clubs on the circuit.
And Peter
City Cabaret.
Coyote was very active up there too.
Yes, the first guy to bring theater sports to San
Oh,
Francisco.
he did? Oh,
Yeah.
that's what you were involved in.
He brought it to the Zen Center, yeah. So Bay Area Theater Sports had an earlier incarnation with Peter Coyote, who was working with Zen monks.
Yes, who is a monk now, who is a whatever he is.
Is he a practicing Zen?
Yes, he is, but
Buddhist
I
now?
forget what you call him. He's
Yeah. We must call him Master. I'm
he's
sure
a master. Yes,
of
he
some
is a
kind.
master.
So we'll call him Master.
He is a master. But did he improv too?
Yeah, he was doing theater sports maybe 5 or 7 years before the teacher who I had
I
from
see.
Seattle, Rebecca Stockley, came down to
I
do it.
see,
So
I see.
he'd started that tradition and said that, the monks are more interested in the theory and the philosophy of the improvisation. I'm an actor.
But that
like to
was
work with
25
actors.
years ago you're talking about when you first did
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah, so
very interesting. Very interesting.
And now here we are in LA doing more improvisation that is...
At the Odyssey.
Yes.
At the Odyssey. Okay, that's where Impro Theater Group is
Yes.
having their show at the Odyssey. What will you be? It's Shakespeare, right? Unscripted?
It's Chekhov.
Oh, Chekhov unscripted.
Chekhov and The Twilight Zone. So we're going to be doing full-length plays in the style of Anton Chekhov.
Scripted?
No, all improvised. So we've been doing the reading the short stories, reading his plays, talking about the types of characters he created.
Oh, so you have
Kinds of
all this
choices.
background before you can actually go on stage. What does a regular improv person do when they don't have the background?
Well, then they probably couldn't do the show.
Oh, they
I think
couldn't do your
yeah,
show.
that's why we rehearse.
But you're directing it, right?
I'm not directing this run.
Oh, I see.
I directed the improvised Tennessee Williams
Oh.
run, which we did at the Odyssey last year.
And so what happens? You sit and you
You read
learn everything
everything.
of Chekhov.
You watch the movies, you look at the DVD extras, you have long conversations. It's like an obsessive book club for improvisers. So we go deep into Chekhov's mind, trying to figure out what did he care about? Why did he write the things that he wrote? And have those conversations, absorb that, and begin to behave as if we were doing work that he had written. So something he didn't write, but maybe something he would have liked.
He did something that he didn't write, but that you are pretending he wrote.
We hope he likes it. Yeah, we hope somewhere.
But how do
over
you
he
direct
likes it.
something like that? How does a director direct an improv group of people?
Well, you start the rehearsal process and see what
This is
the challenges
part
might
of it?
be.
I
Yeah,
see.
it's a long
I
couple of
see.
months of us going through, looking at the
I
reading,
see.
saying, okay, there are certain types of characters that show up over and over again. How do the doctors behave in Chekhov? How do those dark, sort of depressive pre-goth girls of the 19th
So
century
you have
in
all
Russia?
these questions, I see.
Yeah, and we start to make lists of different types of behavior, different
I
things that
see.
people seem to care about,
see.
actions, how do people behave.
Who's in the group?
There are 14 of us.
Wow, you're in this group.
Yeah, so I'm an actor as well as a director in the company.
So do you have specialists who come in and teach you things?
We have done that a little bit, not much. We had John Apicella. Do you know John? He's a commedia expert. So we were doing just some
So somebody
work
to
on
teach you how to
commedia.
do on that?
So we do sessions that help us build our proficiency. We may work with a singing coach when we improvise Sondheim,
Oh, right,
which
that's
is something
so,
else we
right.
do. So we will tap into people that maybe come in for a master class. We've worked with movement people, Camille Letillienne, who's a European movement specialist, and Michael Chekhov's work has come in and done sessions.
So these people work with you when you're prepping
Yeah.
the piece,
Well,
more
we're
or
doing
less.
skill building.
Skill building.
chops
Okay.
sessions.
And then what happens if you come out on stage and the person you're acting with really improvises a stupid thing?
In Chekhov, it's perfect because
Oh, dear.
people make each other irritated all the time in Chekhov. So if they did something that irritated you, you could just say, that is so irritating. Why would you say something to me
I see.
like that, Maria Ivanovna?
So you have to have all the Russian names at your hand.
Very challenging. Yeah, well, yeah.
That's
we
a
try
challenge,
to
yeah.
steep ourselves like a comedy teabag in Russian names.
How many people on stage at the same time?
It can be up to 7. We have a company of 14, but we're really looking at a cast of 7 on any given night.
So if you have like 7, and they say it's a different play every night.
It is. Yeah, they don't just say it. It's a very different play every night. Because if it was the same play as the play you had done last night, or elements of it creep in, then you get distracted by that as an improviser. Then suddenly I'm thinking about last night's show.
Really?
When you played that doctor character that had a similar monologue complaining about the weather, and now you're doing that again, that would distract me and pull me out of whatever I was trying to create that night. So I try not to repeat.
If the audience, I mean, you have a different audience every night, but you have the same play usually, the same play on stage and a different audience.
Right.
And now you have a different play every night, but I don't know how that audience reacts to it.
No, the beautiful thing is the audience is writing the play in their own heads because they can see us doing it. So their level of participation and investment, I think, is different than when you've gone to see a play that you know actors have rehearsed and worked on and that the playwright crafted over a period of time. They know we don't know who's going to come through the door next. And part of their imagination is trying to figure out who they would like to have come through the door next.
How do they dress coming through the door? How are you dressed on stage?
For Chekhov, it's fully costumed like a Chekhov play.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
Oh, it is.
So we're wearing 19th century Russian period costume.
Okay, so if there's 7 of you, you all have your own character names then?
No, we don't know who anybody's going to be. You just come out and someone may look at you and say, "Brother, at last, our estate has finally been settled. We can enjoy ourselves in the style which we would like to become accustomed to." And I may have thought, I'm a servant. I was going to be a servant. But if I get named the brother and the co-owner of the estate, that's who I am.
So then you change.
Yep, you have to let go of your ideas and say yes to whatever you get.
So when you come in, do you come in with these ideas? You have to come in with something.
We'll walk in with something, right. Yeah, we'll come in with some idea. Or someone may just call you on and you'll come in and you'll both find out whatever that moment is together. I just got back from the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. We just did shows up there day before yesterday.
Did you? Did you do this? Did you do improv?
We improvised Shakespeare and Sondheim.
Oh, how great.
Up there. And we were doing a Sondheim musical, and there we'd had a narrator introduce the musical, and this was going to be the story of this young 12-year-old boy searching for a mythical creature that his parents had told him about that none of the other kids knew anything about. So he was the oddball outsider whose family worshipped the snow spider. And Dan and I walked on stage at the same time, and we had that moment of, are you the 12-year-old boy? Are you going to be the 12-year-old boy?
How do you
It's just kind of telepathic, and then I started by saying, are you going to make fun of me too?
Oh, because then you took on the role?
Yeah, so that let him know, okay, so he said, I'm a little relieved. I was a little relieved because I have more singing experience than Dan does. So I think he was a little relieved.
The boy was the singer?
Yeah, well, everybody sang because it was a Sondheim musical. So we all had to sing. We have a great musician, Peter Smith, who works with jazz groups around the city and is Molly Ringwald's musical director.
So he's over at...
he was in Ashland with us.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, he came up and did those shows.
Do a lot of people come up to Ashland, to those plays?
To see the festival?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think we had between 300 and 500 people a night out, and this is outside. So outside at the Green Show, they have a lovely little grassy area that's set up and a stage and lights, and we did about 40 minutes before the main shows would start. So we were the outdoor warm-up acts.
Oh, that's fabulous.
For Shakespeare. We were Shakespeare's warm-up act.
Did you wear costumes too?
Not much. We wore... For Shakespeare, we don't do the full period costume because we'd like to be able to move around.
Warm-up group.
Yeah, we were his opening act.
He would love that. Shakespeare's opening act. Thank you so much for being our closing act.
Oh,
it's
my
over.
pleasure.
Thank you very much, Brian, for
You're
being
welcome.
with us.
Well, I hope you'll join us at the Odyssey.
Thank you. And thanks for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles.